You know what's absolutely wild? Taylor Swift just dodged the biggest legal bullet you can imagine. And I'm not talking about some random lawsuit. I'm talking about being dragged into one of Hollywood's messiest drama scandals involving Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. But here's where it gets crazy. The judge literally just said nope to forcing Taylor into court. And honestly, I think this whole thing reveals something way bigger about how celebrities protect themselves from legal chaos. Stick around because this story has more twists than a Taylor Swift song, and what happens next could change how we see celebrity friendships forever. So picture this. You're Taylor Swift, you're literally on top of the world, your Eras tour is breaking records left and right, and suddenly you get a court summons. Not for anything you did, but because your best friend Blake Lively is in the middle of a massive legal war with her co-star Justin Baldoni from It Ends With Us. And the craziest part? They want to put you under oath and grill you about a movie you barely had anything to do with? But wait, it gets weirder. Justin Baldoni's legal team claimed that Taylor had actually agreed to be deposed. Like, they straight up told the court, yeah, she's cool with it, she'll show up. But then Taylor's lawyers came back swinging and basically said, hold up, we never agreed to anything. Talk about a he said, she said situation that could only happen in Hollywood. Now here's where my jaw literally dropped when I read the court documents. The judge, Louis Lyman, absolutely destroyed Baldoni's legal team in his ruling. He basically called them out for waiting until the last possible second to try and drag Taylor into this mess. Picture this. They had 6 entire months to get their act together, 6 months to properly serve Taylor with a subpoena, and they waited until the 11th hour like some college student trying to turn in a paper at 11:59 p.m. The judge wrote, and I'm paraphrasing here, that they showed zero evidence they even tried to properly serve Taylor with a renewed subpoena. Zero evidence. That's like showing up to a test and telling the teacher, oh yeah, I totally studied, but having absolutely nothing to show for it. The judge was not having it, and honestly, good for him. But here's what really gets me fired up about this whole situation. Blake Lively's lawyers pointed out something that made my blood boil. They claimed that Baldoni's team was basically using Taylor's name as clickbait for media attention. Think about it. Every single headline about this case mentions Taylor Swift now, even though she has literally nothing to do with the actual drama between Blake and Justin. And you know what? I think they're absolutely right. This feels like a calculated move to get more press coverage. Because let's be real, Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni doesn't generate nearly as many clicks as Taylor Swift dragged into Blake Lively court battle. It's genius from a PR perspective, but it's also pretty gross when you think about it. Now, let me break down what actually happened behind the scenes, because this is where things get really juicy. So, Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni were filming It Ends With Us, and apparently things got really uncomfortable on set. Blake ended up filing claims of sexual harassment and retaliation against Justin. That's already a massive deal, right? But then Justin fired back with his own lawsuit. We're talking $400 million here, people. $400 million. But here's the plot twist that nobody saw coming. Justin's lawsuit got completely dismissed. Like, thrown out of court. Game over. Thanks for playing. That had to sting, especially after all the drama and legal fees. But Blake's claims? Those are still moving forward, which tells you everything you need to know about who the court thinks has the stronger case. So where does Taylor fit into all of this chaos? Well, it turns out that during filming, there were some text messages between Blake and Justin that mentioned Taylor's name. And when I say mentioned, I mean Justin sent Blake a text that said something like, I really love what you did with the script, and I would have felt that way without Ryan and Taylor. Just a casual mention of Taylor helping out with the creative process. But here's what's absolutely insane. Taylor's spokesperson came out and basically said, hold up, let's set the record straight. They revealed that Taylor never even set foot on the movie set, never saw an edit of the film, didn't help with casting, didn't score the movie. She literally didn't even watch It Ends With Us until weeks after it came out in theaters, just like the rest of us regular people. The only connection Taylor had to this entire movie was licensing one song, My Tears Ricocheted, for the soundtrack. That's it. One song. And get this, 19 other artists also licensed songs for the same movie. So why aren't that trying to depose Ed Sheeran or whoever else contributed music? because their names don't generate headlines like Taylor Swift does. This whole thing reminds me of how celebrities have to constantly protect themselves from getting sucked into other people's drama. Like, imagine if every time you helped a friend with their work project, you could potentially get dragged into their workplace disputes. That's essentially what almost happened to Taylor here. And speaking of timing, can we talk about how convenient it was that Baldoni's team suddenly wanted to depose Taylor right before her new album drops? The Life of a Showgirl is coming out October 3rd, and they wanted to depose her right around that time. Coincidence? I think not. Nothing generates buzz like legal drama during an album release cycle. But here's what I think is the most interesting part of this whole situation. It shows us how powerful celebrity friendships really are. Blake and Taylor have been friends for years, and you can bet that Taylor's legal team was ready to go to war to protect her from getting unnecessarily dragged into this mess. That's the kind of friendship we all need, honestly. The judge's ruling also reveals something important about our legal system. Just because you're famous doesn't mean you can randomly be subpoenaed for cases you have nothing to do with. There has to be actual relevance, actual evidence that your testimony would matter. And in Taylor's case, there clearly wasn't enough justification. What really bothers me about this whole situation is how it highlights the way some people try to weaponize celebrity names for their own benefit. Whether it's for media attention, legal strategy, or just plain spite, dragging innocent people into your legal battles is not okay. And thankfully, this judge saw right through it. Looking at the bigger picture, this case is far from over. Blake's harassment and retaliation claims against Justin are still moving forward, and that trial is set for next spring in federal court in New York. That's going to be the real showdown, and honestly, I'll be watching to see how it plays out. But for Taylor, this ruling is a massive win. She can focus on her music, her tour, her upcoming album release, without having to worry about being dragged into a courtroom to answer questions about a movie she barely had any involvement with. And as a fan of justice and common sense, I think the judge made absolutely the right call here. The lesson here is pretty clear. Just because you're friends with someone doesn't mean you're automatically responsible for their professional disputes. Just because you helped out with a creative project doesn't mean you're liable for everything that goes wrong afterwards. And just because your name generates headlines doesn't mean you should be used as a pawn in someone else's legal chess game. This whole drama perfectly illustrates how messy Hollywood can get and how important it is to have good lawyers who will fight for you when people try to drag you into situations you don't belong in. Taylor's legal team clearly knows what they're doing, and they protected their client from what could have been a huge distraction and headache. But let me tell you what's really fascinating about this case. It exposes the dark underbelly of how Hollywood legal battles really work. See, most people think these lawsuits are just about justice and truth, but there's a whole strategic game happening behind the scenes that most of us never see. And Taylor almost became a pawn in that game. Think about it from Baldoni's perspective for a second. His original lawsuit against Blake and Ryan Reynolds just got completely demolished in court. $400 million down the drain, his reputation in shambles, and now he's facing Blake's harassment claims that are still moving forward. He's basically backed into a corner with very few cards left to play. So what do you do when you're losing badly in court? You try to change the narrative. You try to make it about something bigger, something that will grab headlines and maybe influence public opinion. And what better way to do that than by dragging the world's biggest pop star into your mess? Here's what I think was really happening behind the scenes. Baldoni's team probably sat around a conference table and said, "Okay, we're getting destroyed in the press, Blake looks like the victim, and our case is falling apart. But wait, there's this one text message that mentions Taylor Swift. What if we make this about her too?" It's actually a pretty clever legal strategy, even if it's morally questionable. By trying to depose Taylor, they accomplish several things at once. First, they get massive media attention. Every entertainment blog and news outlet is now covering their case. Second, they potentially delay the proceedings while fighting over whether Taylor should be deposed. And third, they might uncover something, anything that could help their client's position. But here's where their plan completely backfired. They underestimated both Taylor's legal team and the judge's ability to see through their tactics. Judge Louis Lyman didn't just deny their request, he basically called them out for legal malpractice in his written ruling. And can we talk about the timing issue for a second? Because this is where things get really suspicious. They claimed Taylor couldn't be deposed until after October 20th because of her professional obligations. Now, we know Taylor's new album, The Life of a Showgirl, drops October 3rd. So they're essentially saying they wanted to pose her right during her album release cycle when she'll be doing interviews, promotional events, and probably preparing for another tour announcement. That's not a coincidence, folks. That's strategic warfare. They know deposing Taylor during her biggest promotional period would be maximum disruption. It would overshadow her album release, create negative headlines during what should be her moment of triumph, and potentially damage her brand association with Blake Lively. But Taylor's lawyers saw this coming from a mile away. Their response letter to the court was basically a masterclass in legal defense. They didn't just say no, they explained exactly why this whole thing was inappropriate, unnecessary, and potentially harmful to their client. Here's another angle that I find absolutely mind-blowing. This case reveals how celebrity friendships can become legal liability.